It is now 5:30. The Bradford County Commissioner for Bradford County is holding its public hearing on the adoption of fiscal year 24-25. This will be our tentative budget, our tentative millage rate and the tentative budget. Okay, the meeting is now called to order, and we're going to stand for our invocation and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather before you this afternoon, and we ask that you bless our meeting, bless our decision, and help us to do those things that are good for our community. We ask this in the blessed name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And let the record show that Commissioner Thompson is not here with us today, so we have 4 commissioners present. Meeting having been called to order, we'll now turn over to our Finance Director, Ms. LaFollette.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
The 10 mills needed to fund the budget is greater than the rollback rate of 9.5178 by a margin of 5.0663%. 10.0 mills is expected to generate ad valorem tax revenue of approximately $14,045,335, an increase from the prior fiscal year of $1,134,314. This is due to an increase in property values.
At this time, I'll call for any public comments. Hearing and seeing none. Ms. LaFollette, if there are any comments from the board on this tentative millage? Okay. All right. You can continue, Ms. LaFollette.
Okay, now I will read the title of the resolution into the record. A resolution of the Bradford County Board of County Commissioners adopting the tentative levying of ad valorem taxes for Bradford County for fiscal year commencing on October 1st, 2024 and ending on September 30th, 2025, and providing an effective date.
Okay. Ms. LaFollette has read the resolution, and then I'll call for a motion for the adoption of the resolution as presented.
Make a motion to approve the resolution as read.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Doherty.
Adopt the resolution as read.
Okay. A motion by Commissioner Doherty. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Reddick. Any further discussions or questions? All in favor, let it be known by the sign aye.
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 Any opposed? We're 4-0. Okay.
Okay, the total operating tentative budget, including interfund transfers and bond reserves for fiscal year 2024-2025 is $93,877,714.
Thank you. I'll call for any public comments at this time. Hearing and seeing none, I'll call for any comments from the commission. Okay. Hearing none, Ms. LaFollette, you want to do the presentation?
A resolution of the Bradford County Board of County Commissioners adopting the tentative budget for Bradford County for fiscal year commencing on October 1, 2024 and ending on September 30, 2025, providing an effective date.
At this time, I call for a motion for the adoption of the tentative budget resolution presented by Ms. LaFollette.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 2024 to 2025.
Is there a second to, motion by Commissioner Doherty? Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Reddick. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, let it be known by the sign aye.
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 At 4-0.
Okay, lastly, I just need to announce the date for the public hearing to adopt the final millage rate and budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. It will be on Tuesday, September 17th, 2024 at 5:30 PM here in the commission meeting room.
Thank you, Ms. McCormick.
Thank you.
Any further business?
Yes, ma'am. We have a couple of items that we need to take up. After this morning's meeting, I requested that Amanda and Heather get together and pull all the data points for work that was performed by the Public Works Department for the entire month of July and August. And then they categorized it into districts, and you have that report in front of you. And as you can see, the work was evenly distributed across all 5 districts. Also in front of you, you have a Public Works request for equipment purchase. We discussed briefly this morning about the possibility of purchasing 2 new batwing mowers and bringing on 3 additional personnel. So the Chief Deputy Clerk has requested that we take up that issue tonight so you guys can discuss it and make a decision so that it can be properly put into the upcoming budget.
All right, this is open for discussion.
I'll be glad to start off, but at this time, I don't see, spending extra money into the Public Works Department for additional equipment, nor hiring additional staff at this time. Like I said, we keep going back to cutting the budget. The clerk has made it very clear, and so is his staff, that, we're slowly going down a road that we don't want to be going down. And, this is just an additional cost that's going to be on the county. And right now, mowing 6 months out of the year, it might not happen as fast as everybody wants it, but it does happen. And so therefore, my recommendation would be to not approve this purchase.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'll just say one thing, and I know it's tough to spend the money, but at the same time, if we don't do this, then we need to get off Jason's back about mowing, because he's only got 13 men working for him. Again, like I said this morning, they do the roads, the ditches, the mowing. They trash on the side of the road. They take care of all that. They do everything for the county. And so by agreeing with Commissioner Daltrey, that, I hate to spend any extra money, but at the same time, if we're not going to spend the money, then we don't need to bring it up anymore to Jason about the mow. We just need to let them mow what they mow and go on with it. And that might be the cut we need to make, because like I said, otherwise, and I'll just throw this up. We didn't vote in nothing to support fire, and now we're throwing another expense on. So since we didn't vote in anything for that, we're at 10 mills, we're maxed out. So, again, that's our 2 choices. Either stop complaining about the mowing or buy 2 more to help the guy out and put the county further in debt. That's why I'm looking at it.
Any comment?
And is that really what we want to do? We don't want to, what is your opinion?
Well, I don't.
Especially after this report that you gave me, which shows
Yeah.
that,
I'm a fiscal conservative as well. I get it. The clerk and I are on the same page. We can't keep going down the road we're going when it comes to spending. But Commissioner Riddick is absolutely correct when he says that if we're not going to increase our spending to cover an additional level of service, then we need to be happy with where we're at, because where we are is where we are. And that, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Can I say something maybe make you feel better about this, Miss Andrews? I have a lot of friends that live in the low-lying areas of this county. Graham being one of the main ones, Hampton, Laudy. on a daily basis. I call them and say, hey, what are you doing? Just praying it doesn't rain today. I need to mow the yard. It's about 2 foot high. Huh? So can you imagine being the road department and trying to figure out when the ditches are dry enough that you won't tear the ditches all to pieces when you go out there to mow? And on that one, I've noticed it's been unusually wet, especially in the Graham area. Your area is always dry now. Your road out there, that's always a nice high and dry spot, but the rest of the county's not that lucky.
Yeah.
It's a lot. The ditches stay wet most of the summer.
Well, and I agree, and apparently I'm the only district that has a problem with it. And this, I can't wait to get out tomorrow and check these areas that got mowed because, like I said, I encourage every one of you that thinks that what I said this morning was not true to come and ride in my district. Please come and ride in my district. Take a look at the weeds that are probably 12 foot high, and then come back and tell me, Miss Andrews, it's all mowed. What are you talking about? Because I have no reason to lie. Never. I have been a supporter of Jason and his crew ever since I got here, and will continue. But the truth is the truth, and right now, it's a mess. It's a mess. And no, we're not wet. And it could be mowed, but it's just not. Now, as far as this, again, I think this was done to show that we can't do anything. And this morning, I mentioned to him several recommendations that we've talked about is getting inmate squads. Not the sheriffs. The sheriffs is the sheriffs. But we should have people that mow every day. That's what they do. Just a couple of people. You don't have to have 15 people mowing. But put a couple of people that's what they do every day. They don't go anywhere. They get on their mowers and they mow the county. At the same time, we could have squads that have 5 inmates and 1 supervisor that could go and do massive amounts of work in the county. But we refuse to do that. We refuse to even talk about it. I also recommended that we take a few staff and have a few that works on Friday. Have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off. We can't do that. That would cost us more money. So, obviously, I'm the only one that has a problem with us, and I can't say that, okay, I'll never say another word about my road's not getting, I can't do that. And I mean, how would somebody even ask me to do something like that? Because I have to do my job, whether anybody else does their job or not. And so I can't make that promise, Mr. Reddick. But I'm not, we don't have to buy this. How many lawnmowers do we have? Since Jason's not here.
Well, it's had 2 bat wings.
Yeah. And riding lawnmowers?
I have no idea.
So we have the equipment. I just think that scheduling is not done the way it could produce a lot more work. And so anyway, that's my comment.
Well, I'll share my thoughts. I don't disagree with you, Ms. Andrews, in terms of the condition of the roadways. And maybe you all, others do the same, but I drive through the whole county, not just my area, but I've looked at other areas too. Sometimes I get called from somebody from Mr. Riddick area, sometimes Ms. Andrews, sometimes Mr. Doherty, whoever area it is, I may just run and take a look. So the condition of the roads is not unique in terms of their need for mowing in your area. I can count you at least probably 6 roads in my district that are just terrible. And it's not from the lack of care to get it done is from the lack of being able to schedule that to get done based on the situation that we've encountered with the rain and the weather and all of those things. By the time they mow me over in District 1 and go to District 2 or 3, my area's already grown up before they can even get to 5. So it's the circumstances in which we find ourselves in, and I don't feel that Mr. Dawes has enough workers in terms of mowing the roadways. Sometimes we look at it in one way that it's just mowing, it's just the roads, but it's more than that. It impacts our health and safety. Health being that if the roadways are up to a certain height, that makes it a dangerous situation for the children, makes it a dangerous situation for flooding, for snakes, and anything else. So it is a serious problem, but I think it's one in which if we put our heads together and come up with a strategy for working through it, we can come up with some ideas that can work. I think it's an excellent idea, and I've made that suggestion too in terms of inmate labor. We have, 4 major prisons that we're surrounded by. There was a time due to COVID where we couldn't get that help, but I think we're at a different place now that maybe we can access some of that help that is available right in our own backyards. So I do agree that we can do some things differently in terms of getting some help without a overbearing financial costs. So we have to look at outside of the box in which we looked at roads and that kind of thing and just put it to one side, that it is an important piece, because if we want to attract people to our community, if we want to improve our economic base, we need to have our communities in a condition that people would want to come, and we need to be able to sell ourselves and be able to do that. But in fairness to you, Ms. Andrews, I don't disagree that the condition, but if you took a drive through right now and went over to Lincoln City on Southeast 45th or 46th, you'd see the same condition that the grass is up to here. If you drove through Pleasant Grove on some of those roads, you're going to find the same. And some other areas down in Hampton, the only one that's really in good shape, pick on my brother right here, that's because he's in the city and the city helps. But if I wrote to Mr. Thompson, I'll find some of those same conditions. What I'm saying to you is not just unique to District 5. It is the same situation in all of our districts, and we do need to address it. Whether we need to address it with buying more equipment, that's the one thing, but we can address it in how we attack that issue to see what else that we can be done. So if the Department of Corrections is willing to help and engage, let's engage them and do something in that regard. But I do think that he needs a few more people that can do it on a short-term basis, not the entire year, but it's particularly during the summer months leading up to the fall to take care of that. So in his upcoming budget, perhaps that's something that he could take a look at in hiring some part-time people. I'm the one who I did make the suggestion about the kids in the summer and doing some of those things. So I know you need some direction in terms of what the board wants and need to do.
Yes, ma'am. And let me just say, to clear up the question of the inmates, we have a contract with the prison that allows for us to get up to 10 inmates per day?
Oh,
It's close to that, but we haven't gotten 10 in probably 2 years.
So I talked to Jason earlier today, and he said that we typically get 2 to 3 is all they'll give us.
Lottie's the only one right now that's worked with us over my term as clerk anyway, as far as getting inmates from. Lottie's the only one.
okay. So maybe it's time to have that discussion with them again to see if they can assist us. If we can get up to 10 per day, that will have a great impact on remedying this situation.
Been taking the big sprayer and spraying every, what do you call it? Guardrails.
Mhm.
He's having-
Yes, he
I mean,
has.
there's nobody, can't get them, so he's been rain, shower, I don't know, driving across the county, spraying those guardrails. If you go by, I think he kills everything, I'm not sure what he sprayed.
He did a really good job on mine
Yeah, he's-
because you couldn't see it at all.
I know, so he's been doing that, and then the other work squad, and what's funny to this is we had our other work squads, which weren't mowing cemeteries, or we have 30-something place we take care of with our side inmate workers, and there's 2 assigned to the road department. I go to breakfast, and I get beat over because they seen our inmates mowing the side of the road with 0 turns. When do we start using 0? I said, we're trying to catch up, grass is growing everywhere, and then I get beat up over because we're using 0 turns to mow. I mean, there's always gonna be something negative, but that's what these commercial people are doing for the state. They use it, we've got the nice 0 turns, and when we're not, and we use a lot of them for like sidewalk areas, going in the Brooker, where it's nice, you can try to use the 0 turns there, it's a little better than just the right of way going down the main road in regards to it, and we just, with the storm, I do just my yard, but it's a full time this time of year. Then what happens? Come into September, October, once the love boats come and go, then if you hire the extra help, then you're stuck with the extra help because there's no place. Now, Commissioner Daugherty knows ours for us out there on Flume Road night and picks up all the trash.
But and they still need help. I mean, they do. I mean, there's a lot of it I can't get to.
In our areas, I always mess with them, but it is tough right now. Then we try to pitch in and help, and then you get the citizens, well, we're using 0 turn. Doesn't matter. If it's not too tall, we can still cut it with 0 turn.
I'd be glad to see somebody pushing the lawnmower right now
Amen.
because it's horrible.
If we get enough inmates, I'd like to see them all push, to be honest with you.
Well, I think into all these points, and Commissioner Andrews, please don't think that I'm disagreeing with you, because again, I can take you down some of the roads that are in our district, and yes, I do have a lot of the city, but there are roads down there that are just full of trash, they're full of weeds, and they're wet. But I mean, a good example is you don't see DOT out mowing a lot of even the state roads, because for the same thing the clerk said, they're wet. And they don't get in there, and if they do, they tear the ditches up, and then you have a drainage problem, and it just goes back and forth and back and forth. And just like I said in that one meeting, at some point, just like, we need fire, nobody wants to pay a fire assessment. Well, now we're talking about people wanting their roads graded and mowed and ditches cut and everything else. I mean, at what point are we talking about a roadway assessment? So again, it's all about, everybody wants certain things, but they certainly don't want to have to pay for it. And I don't want to have to pay for purchasing 2 more mowers when we're in a situation that we're just, not good financially.
And if I may add, because even if, like you just mentioned, 301, I was looking at it coming in. It's not mowed, it's high as it can be.
Yeah.
All down 301 from here to Hampton.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
yeah. And also too, if I'm not mistaken, I thought Jason said, every Friday for sure. I thought he said Friday and Saturday
Friday and Saturday.
that he's got 2 men on mowers.
Yeah, we've been mowing on Fridays and Saturdays for since the storm.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We have, some of us hadn't got an update, so we wouldn't know that.
So the point is that we have to, it's something that we can't ignore, or not bring up that it needs to be addressed. But we need to look at how we can do it and what resources that we can do that are less costly than this. Because if we have the available resources within our counties, with our county, then let's try to work out some kind of plan, some agreement with them to help us, to DOT. And if you look at it, it's about 4 to 6 months in which we do need some temporary help with the mowing.
Madam Chairman, helping the cities as well. They've got the same issue. So we've had like around the school, where school started, some ditches, some other right of ways that have really just gotten out of hand. So we're trying to assist them, and they're part of it. We try to work with them when we can, but it's really overwhelming right now.
Yeah.
Well, I do know the work camp at RMC, they have opened back up. Now, I don't know how many they have, and I don't know,
And it just changed
If-
quality too, so we're getting a little bit different. It just
Yeah.
changed boards, so we're trying to get the more inmates we get, the better off we are.
and of course UCI had, well, I think maybe that went, no, it's probably back to UCI. And I had talked to them a few years back, And, of course, they said, you know, they look for places for the inmates to come out and work. And, so, I mean, and that's just right there at Rayford. So, I mean, it's not that far to be able to pick up 5 people to come and work. So there's options. We just have to, we have to try. We have to talk to people and find out what we can find out. And you know, it's very simple to get our people qualified to work the inmate squads. They take a class and they're certified, and then you've got, I mean, like I said, you quadruple your workforce, and it's just, I mean, to me, it's no brainer, but I mean, I'm just one person.
They'll give it to us. We've got the equipment. Do certified, that's paid for a lot of it. Maybe it's something we look at, maybe buying some of the smaller trucks, not big back wings, but something we used to. And Commissioner Thompson, when we first took over, we had a little small tractor that we used to custom areas. You can call and say, this is an issue, we got whatever, and it could help out. We sideline, it's hold more out. Maybe something we need to look at just to step up where we can help a little bit more, especially during that July, August. That is really our peak grass growing time. We'll do whatever we can to assist and help out and get some areas, but there's just certain areas like in your district, all the commissioners have a certain area that it just becomes overwhelming in certain areas that we go and take care of.
And like I said, my area is dry, so it can be mowed. So it's not a point that it's too wet to mow, but,
And fortunately, my district is a wet district, and so it stays wet a lot, and it grows fast and quickly. But perhaps, Mr. Carnegie, if you, the sheriff, Mr. Dodds, and some, you know, engage with some of the members of DOC to see what we can do to get some help. Okay.
With them to see if we can get a few more. I mean, right now it's just really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was with the city, DOC was very responsive and cooperative. We were able to get 5 inmate crews. One was assigned to each of the 5 districts, so that you knew at least one time a week somebody's going to be coming into your area to, you know, to address the growth and cleaning. So.
but I don't think that it's something that we dismiss. I mean, I know those 2 live in my district, and to just say, well, we're just not going to mow the yard, mow it anymore. When they come, they come, and I mean, I think that's irresponsible of us, and not trying to find a way to make this work. I just, and to some people that might not be important. To me, just like Ms. Spooner says, we all talk about economic development, and it's important what they see driving down 301. But it's also important. Bricker has houses going up in a lot of areas, and when they come in and it looks like it does right now, I turn around and drive out because it's disgusting. I mean, it looks horrible, and so we do nothing for economic growth when we allow this to sit and look like this. So, you know, I know that we can mow around the places that we're trying to push, and all's well and good, but there's other places in the county that is trying to do their own economic development, and I think that they deserve consideration and some help. So.
Okay. In our self-promotion and telling our stories about Bradford County, we want to tell a story of being problem solvers. So when we're confronted with an issue that needs our attention, we don't just dismiss it and say, don't bring it up, but we can bring it up, but in a constructive manner. We're working on a resolution to it. And so that is what I'm asking Mr. Carnegie and the sheriff and Mr. Dodds and whomever else that has some suggestions for us. And so because we're at the brink of our budget, I wouldn't recommend that we move towards this amount of purchase at this time. But as Mr. Dodds has his new budget coming for the next year, perhaps he can engage some part-time or seasonal help with the mowing and weeding.
And Madam Chair, just to think outside of the box, and I'm glad that you brought up seasonal workers, because that is something that in the county we have done historically in the past, explored that option. But also, and this just came to mind, and I don't know if it would be something that could be, a partnership could be created maybe between the county and the North Florida Technical Center. If they maybe could offer a program for heavy equipment operation, and maybe some of those folks could come and shadow with our Public Works Department and learn some of that equipment, and could also, work in the summer months, on some of these pieces of equipment. I mean, that would be a whole new programming, I understand, and that's really thinking outside of the box, but I figure that's what we're here for. We're thinking outside of the
Absolutely,
box.
absolutely. And the young group that presented, the IFAS group, that's another group that engages the high school, men and young men and women, but there are groups and opportunities that we have in our community that would be willing to help and engage with us. So I
And
think that's
also,
good.
one thing that we used to do at the prison, and we had a lease program, and we leased lawnmowers because we couldn't afford to constantly be buying them. So we had a lease program where we leased the things, and when it was broken, we took it again, got a new one, and or probably not a new one, but got a different one. But that's an option that we could look at, where we're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I don't know what that would cost any. I mean, that might be but it might be something that we could look at that would be a lot more doable than this.
I didn't catch, were you talking about contract mowing?
Lease, no.
Oh, lease equipment,
Leasing the
lease
equipment.
equipment,
Yeah.
yes. Contract mowing is rather expensive. It would probably be, my best estimate from the old estimate would be over 100,000 per mowing.
But with the equipment, instead of paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for it, then we might could go into a lease program. And I don't know if they even still do that. Do you know, Sheriff?
A lot of our stuff is leased.
Okay.
Yeah,
The slope mowers leased, big loaders, graders.
But
things
even
like
the
that.
lawnmowers, I mean, and when I say lawnmower, I mean zero turns and stuff like that, where we could, I think that we could save a lot of money but it might be something to
I
consider.
agree with you, but the thing is, to the best of my knowledge, is like the guys that run the mowers are the same guys in off season that run slope mowers, the ditch bank mowers, the ones that mow the
Right.
steep ditches and all that stuff. So, I mean, yeah,
That's why we
that
need
that mower, that slope mower is $11,000 a month on lease.
Wow.
It's like a $300,000 piece
Do we
of
rent it
equipment.
all year long?
Yes, it runs most of the year. It runs most of the year.
Okay. Any other thoughts and ideas?
Madam Chair, I don't know, I'll have to ask the clerk's office if we could get consensus tonight to authorize, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 part-time positions during the peak season. Could we build that? Could we build that into this upcoming year's budget?
Yes, it won't do anything this year, but I
Right.
mean, if Jason explored leasing equipment and if he wanted to do it from June or July through September and figure the manpower staffing for those couple of months. But then again, I mean, you lease this equipment and you don't know if it's going to rain every day for a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
We
kind
can-
of like
We can take the equipment lease up as a separate issue, but if we can go ahead and get consensus to hire 3 or 4 part-timers during the peak season, then that would give the clerk's office an opportunity to budget for it.
That makes sense.
Madam Chair
Yeah.
and Mr. Cornegay, Ms. Roden brought this up earlier about, having, more budget workshops, going into the next year.
Yes.
And I think these items that we're talking about right here need to be a part of that. And I don't think we need to make any decisions on that now, because here we are right at tentative budget, and we're trying to make all these decisions that I think need to be thought out more as we go through the budget, as we go through next year, and we continue to have these workshops, and then we can have that discussion at that time.
Well, I think the discussion is good to have it. It won't impact the budget for this year, as you're indicating, but at least for the next year, he would have the wherewithal to possibly have her a few seasonal positions.
If I think what I'm hearing, Mr. Cornegay ask the board if there is a consensus, if there is an interest to move forward in next budget year, the one that we've just adopted. I think that's what he was looking for, if there's a consensus to hire in that budget year. And if that's the case, we would need action tonight, so that way we can build it into the budget, so that way at your September 17th meeting, that budget will reflect those new salary positions. We already have an idea as far as what a full-time at $16.50, what that would cost 3 employees. So I think it wouldn't exceed that. But I think what I've heard Commissioner Doherty just say is that the board can go in that direction, certainly, or does the board want to take a beat and maybe not include that in fiscal year 24-25 budget? And when you begin to have your budget workshops next year, after you've adopted this budget, starting, anywhere between April and July, to build your 25-26 budget, do you want to talk about it then, building it into that budget and taking the time to really explore, the cost of seasonal workers, where we can maybe work with DOC, maybe what that lease program, really allow us to take some time to explore all those options. So that's certainly, I hope I.
No, you framed
You
it
can
correctly.
clarify that, and if we engaged or did it, it would be the 167,000, right? If we did
If you
those.
did do it, I think it would not exceed that amount.
Wouldn't exceed, it would, I believe it would be less, because without having a conversation with Jason, I
Of
don't know if
course.
he'd want to structure it part-time or what, but yeah, it would be less than 167.
Okay.
Well, again, the reason I brought that up with what Ms. Roden said is during those discussions and these budget workshops, then at least that way, each department is aware of what their needs would be for the following year. So therefore, if they know that they need these extra people, then where else do they cut spending out of their budget to be able to put that in their budget and still be within, a good number to where we're not, again, just draining the general fund or going through, all the other contingencies and everything else that we tend to do. So
And in fairness to Mr. Dot, since he isn't here to give his input about it, then that would make sense, to see what he also says.
Yes, ma'am.
But despite that, I would ask that you all still engage to see what we can do with DOT or others who can help us with the roadside issues. Any further discussion? Thank you. All right.
We do have one other item we need to take up. Chief Carter's here, and the question about transfers, we need to make a decision on that once again, so we can make budget corrections if need be. So Chief Carter, if you want to go into that.
Absolutely. So, Madam Chair, Board, thank y'all.
Yeah.
Do want to bring something before you that's going to impact our budget, and that is the fact that I met Friday with North Florida HCA Hospital here in Stark, and they're at the point where they are looking at taking their own transfers now. We've been in contract with them since May of 2020. This is something that I know Alan Parrish, myself, and Mr. Thompson have all said, to not rely on this revenue. But we're at the point now to where they are ready to start standing up their own transfer service here in the county, and so that would look like us still being first for time-sensitive transfers. So anything that's emergent, heart attack, stroke, things of that nature would be still with the county. Things that need to get out of there emergently would still be our responsibility. But the routine transfers, hospital to hospital, if it's a 24-hour observation or things of that nature would go towards HCA would handle those on their own. So again, anything time sensitive we would still handle at this time, and then anything that is non-emergent they would handle. This does come at a time also where we're really having to look hard at, do we bring before the board the option of adding a 5th ambulance back, because there are multiple times throughout the days where people are having to wait for ambulances, and that's a reality. And so we're at a point to either how do we reduce our call volume to keep ambulances available for our citizens here in the county more often, or how do we go about adding another unit back? And so the timing is, again, North Florida is wanting to take over their own transfers, and so that is kind of where we're at. So that does, if you want to look at it in a positive light, it does help that situation of leaving our units available more often for our people. Again, with still capturing the mission of getting the people that need to be out of that hospital to a definitive care facility more quickly. And so what that looks like is just a decrease in revenue for our department for next year.
So there's clearly pros and cons for this. Probably the biggest reason for discontinuing transfers is to keep these rescue units available for the citizens and residents of Bradford County. Another pro is also to reduce the fuel cost and the wear and tear on our rescue units, not to mention the wear and tear on our people. The downside to discontinuing the transfers is obviously the loss of revenue. So we need to make a decision on which way we want to go with that.
Well, and I think that it's not necessarily our decision to make. I think the hospital is making that decision for us. I know that as of May 2025 is when our contract expires. They have no appetite to renew that specific contract of us being the primary transfer service. They indicated that as soon as October 1, they were ready to start taking their own transfers. I asked them if we could hold that, obviously, and they agreed to that. So as far as when that date will be of when that transition happens, we're not exactly sure what that looks like. And that's hard for us to project revenue based on a lot of what ifs. But the bottom line is that's coming down the pike of those things are the transfers are eventually going to decrease. I won't say they'll go away, because I don't foresee there being a time to where we're ever going to say we're not doing transfers at all. But they are certainly going to decrease over the next year.
Did you finish the analysis that you guys were going to do on whether or not we were costing ourselves money? Because that was a discussion that we had.
Yes, ma'am. And so if you look at it from our Florida, the EMS cost report, we discussed that during the community paramedicine program proposal, in that the state of Florida recognizes that our cost per transport is about $730 per call is what our rescues per transport cost. And so
now, is overtime figured into that?
Yes, ma'am. That's the total overall budget is everything that's captured in that number. And so in fiscal year 23, we ran 1,682 transfers. That's an average of 4.6 per day. So if you look at what our gross revenue was from, again, fiscal year 22-23 was around 1.2 million. And so it's actually the number that we had was $1,247,219. So we took that overall gross revenue and divided that by the number of transfers, and showed that per transfer we're netting, our gross revenue is $741.51 per transfer. And then again, looking at our cost per call is $730. So
we're making $11.
$11 on a transfer. Now, so if you do that math out, basically, and you take the number of calls times, or the number of transfers multiplied by the $730, you are at $1,227,000. $227,860. And so you subtract the $1,247,219 minus $1,227,860. And looking at it that way, our net revenue is $19,359. Now, if we lose revenue from transfers, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can decrease. So let's just say that we reduce our revenue by $1 million, that doesn't mean we can cut $1 million out of our budget. Because again, we're back to where we started from in 2019, 2020, whenever we started taking over these transfers. So we're back to 4 ambulances because in April of 2020, we added a 5th ambulance. That ambulance was removed from service in, I believe it was March 17th of 2022. And it's been out of service since that time, but there was a countywide hiring freeze. And we were at a point to where we had 6 vacancies as a unit. So, the board at the time made the decision to, not hire and to just remove that 5th ambulance from service, with the other understanding that if we needed that 5th ambulance back, if we were having the issues like we're having now, to come back before this board. Again, I think that we're at the point to where if these transfers are decreased, we don't need to look at adding that 5th ambulance back right now, which I think is the best case scenario. It is unfortunate that we're losing revenue. However, we're not adding staff. We're not increasing staffing levels. So again, if you look at it from the math done here, it's $19,359 is what we make annually is our net revenue off those transfers. But again, we can't look at, unless we were just to say we're going to take a unit out of service now that we're losing the transfers, we're moving back prior to whenever we even started the transfers. So I think looking at it from it's going to be hard to calculate exactly how much savings there will be. And so in talking with Ms. Roden and Ms. LaFollette this afternoon, or this morning actually after our meeting, it was, I think best probably to leave our budget the same for this next year, see how much we can save, what that savings actually looks like in fuel cost, auto repair and maintenance, overtime, things of that nature, to be able to say, okay, look, now we have an idea of what we can actually reduce by or not have to increase by the following year. So I think that's where we're at right now. So again, this just was made aware to me on Friday, and wanted to bring this before you as we're discussing the budget. Obviously, this is an adjustment that they're going to need to make in the finance office. So it's unfortunate. However, it does address a massive issue within the county of people having to wait significant times for ambulances. So that's where we're at.
But we do have 3 fire trucks now that can respond and stabilize a patient until they can be transported, correct?
Absolutely.
Because we had this talk a long time ago when I said North Florida's getting their own ambulances.
Yep.
And we're not going to have this revenue coming in all this time for this 4th ambulance.
Right.
And it was a point made at that time was that the 3 fire trucks could more than handle and go out to a call, stabilize a patient, wait for a rescue to get there. But now we're talking about keeping the 4th ambulance.
Yes, sir. Well, I don't know that it was ever discussed of getting rid of the 4th ambulance.
It was very clearly. That was.
I don't remember that. If it was, I certainly don't remember that. But
because I was worried about keeping this 4th ambulance on, with North Florida already having 6 or 8 ambulances parked over there at the Gainesville Hospital, and now we're here and we have the extra ambulance and not the extra income.
I wouldn't look at it as an extra ambulance because we added a 5th. Again, we added the 5th to take those transfers. The 5th went away, so we've already done away with that ambulance.
That was COVID too.
Right.
That was in the middle of COVID, and we had the one for transfers.
Well, no, that was 2022 is when the 5th ambulance went away.
Because COVID was over.
Right, but that ambulance was put on for the interfacility transfers.
The 4th one.
The 5th.
Okay.
So, Chief, my question then would be, if North Florida is going to provide that service, then wouldn't that essentially be the 5th ambulance?
What do you mean? I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
So, you're saying right now we have 4 that
Right.
are running, right? But then North Florida is going to start running their own patients back and forth. So, wouldn't that be essentially a 5th ambulance that's providing services to the hospital?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying we don't need to add that 5th ambulance back.
Okay.
Yes, I'm saying we're at a point to where if we keep the transfers, if we were to continue to do those transfers, we would have to look at adding a 5th ambulance back, because we're not taking those transfers or because they're coming in to take their own. You're exactly correct. It is that is essentially that 5th ambulance, and so we can maintain at 4 and not have to worry about increasing. But again, we've had 4 ambulances for as long as I can remember. We've had we've had 4 ambulances. I mean, it was very early on in my career whenever we're down to 3. And again, the 5th ambulance was brought on to take those transfers. And then, as a matter of fact, I pulled the dates. It was May 21st of 2020 is when the board entered into an agreement with North Florida with an effective date on May 1st, 2020. On April 15th of 2020, we had added a 5th ambulance that was placed in service to accommodate the anticipated increased call volume due to the interfacility transfers. And so again, that truck went out of service on March 17th, 2022. The 5th ambulance went out of service on March 17th, 2022. It's been out of service ever since.
And the original anticipated income in 2020 was right around a $500,000, just a little over $500,000.
I'd have to take a look at that. I don't recall off the top of my head.
And then it increased,
It did.
right around $1 million.
Right.
Yeah, because of the call volumes.
Right.
And Chief, the HCA seemed to be in such a transient situation with everybody,
Yeah.
Not just you guys, but with insurance companies,
Right.
with everybody for the various services. And I know you said that they are looking towards taking care of their own transfer, but you don't have a definitive date. Maybe in May, or maybe, everything is.
I would
going to be-
anticipate prior to that, but I would think, again, May is when the contract expires. And so they have every right, even within that contract, to take care of handling, transferring their own patients. The main point in that contract was to make sure it wasn't bidded out to an outside agency, like a private ambulance company, to come in and handle those transfers. So, but they have every right to transfer their own patients.
Certainly.
So.
Certainly.
Chief, would it be safe to say that this would be another item that we could start having in our budget discussions that, as we move forward, and if we're looking at a 5th one, then, we can discuss that as we move through, these charrettes or, little workshops that we're going to have.
I really think that with the way that our call volume is right now, again, if North Florida takes these transfers, I think we'll be in good shape. I think we'll have less of those instances where somebody's waiting for an ambulance to show up.
Chief Carter, I
Yes,
just have a
ma'am.
quick
Go
question.
ahead,
For
Commissioner.
my own clarification.
Sure.
Are we saying that the 4 ambulances that you have currently in operation,
Mhm.
of those 4, is one of those doing your transports for HCA? Or are you saying that there's a 5th ambulance that was doing your transfers for HCA and now that the or not?
No, ma'am. So right now, again, after March 17th of 2022, that 5th ambulance was placed out of service. So
Okay.
we've been doing those transfers with the 4 ambulances that we have. They rotate through, right? So
Okay.
Medic 6 will take one, and then Medic 5 takes one, and so on and so forth. They rotate through those transfers. So each truck will go take one. So that way it spreads it out. But there is not a dedicated truck for those transfers. That dedicated transfer truck was added on April 15th of 2020 and went away on March 17th of 2022. And at that time, the board said, we understand that we're in the middle of a hiring freeze. We have these positions open. If it gets to a point to where you need this truck back, I remember this very vividly. This board said, come back before this board and tell us what you need. And again, we're at that point of we either need to look at a 5th ambulance or we're out of this transfer business. And it just so happens that these transfers are going away at some point in the very near future. So I think we're in good shape, again, to not add a 5th truck. We're not talk about adding anything back. We're just saying that we're not going to cut anything. It's just a matter of maintaining status quo, but our trucks are going to be available for our citizens more often. Does that make sense?
Okay, sure.
I just want to make everyone aware of that situation.
Yeah,
All right.
I would really like to look at this more in our budget workshops, because for $19,000 profit a year, we're probably losing money. If you start adding in the wear and tear and the maintenance on that ambulance, I bet we're actually losing money every year. Then it because 19,000, that's nothing. As many trips as y'all make, I bet we're definitely losing money.
Well, and if you think
On
about,
that
that's our, the $730, that's the cost for our average transports. That includes costs or calls that are going here to Stark. These are more expensive because they are going to Gainesville every single time, or Jacksonville, or we had 2 the other night that went to Ocala. So we're driving 61 miles one way to go take an interfacility transport and taking our unit out of service for, 4 hours total. So it's I think it will be a significant benefit to taxpayers of Bradford County to have those units more available here in Bradford County. Oh, please go ahead.
Chief Carter and I have had the same public.
Oh, yeah.
Us with the comm center, they're there when the fifth one away. I don't know what the cost is. I don't get into that part of it, but I can tell you we've had many meetings where people have legitimate questions.
Yep.
The fifth one went away. If we had the fifth one right now, we'd be dearly in the hole for what it costs to
Yeah.
transport. I think the chief's in the right direction. They're probably doing us a favor. HCA is doing us no favors in Bradford County. We need a hospital. Yeah, Bradford County rural, McClinic, rural hospitals everywhere. HCA has done us no justice, and I'll be fine to tell it in front of anybody. Our community needs our hospital. Our community needs those services that have been taken away. And when people call for rescue services, he gets beat up, I get beat up. I'm with you, Commissioner Riddick. I don't think we've made any money. Wear and tear on our vehicles, wear and tear, the time. That's the reason when you see a wreck and they say there's injuries, our deputies don't work that wreck. I don't have 3 hours for a deputy to run to Gainesville, Middleburg, Jacksonville, or wherever they get life flights to or transported. So we have to turn it over to FHP now. People say, wait, as soon as they say they're injured, we don't have a hospital. My deputies can't run down there and get the information needed for the accident. So we've had to turn those over because we lose that one deputy for 3 or 4 hours. It creates a workload for the other men and women involved. Chief Carter has realized this a while back. He's done everything. I'm talking about professionals, not friendship. Besides all that, him and I had to sit in a closed door room with citizens and explain exactly what he's explaining to y'all. And maybe they're doing us a favor. Maybe there's ways to cut. He won't know until he gets into next year because you don't know. I don't know anything about it.
Sure.
Another thing that is worth mentioning is several weeks ago, we started billing for wall time at the hospital, and that has produced an additional revenue source. And I hadn't had a chance to ask the chief, but I'm fairly, am I correct in saying that revenue would probably come close to offsetting the 19,000?
It will more than offset that 19,000 for sure. We billed 12,000 14,000 the first month in June. July we billed right at 12,000. So we're looking at over 10,000 a month off those wall times. So, and that's another issue of when we take these interfacility transfers, you would think, hey, they've already got a bed over here at the hospital, they're ready to go. Well, when we get there, that doesn't mean that they're going to a floor. That means they're probably going to the emergency department, and they're still sitting there holding a bed. So even if it's a transfer, it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be placed in a bed. So now we've taken this unit that's doing an interfacility transfer from one hospital to another that's still sitting on the wall when they get to that other hospital. So again, there's plenty of instances. I have a whole folder full of photographs of our call screen whenever, times like y'all have seen it, to where, we have a truck on a transfer and there's a 911 call holding, or there's no trucks available and 2 transfers holding. And so it's just it's become a bit of a monster. And that's the status that we're at right now. The situation we're in is looking at, hey, do we need to add back this 5th truck, or, these transfers are going to be going away again. I think they're I don't want to say doing us a favor, because we will, we've certainly made money off these transfers. I don't want to make that a statement out there to say that we haven't made money off these transfers, because we have, but at what cost to the citizens?
Right.
Okay, bye.
Mhm.
Wanted to pull out after October 1st. It
Right.
could benefit our county. Why did we not allow them to go ahead and pull out in their contract? We asked them to wait until March. It
Sure.
would benefit us more to do it now.
Because it is such a financial impact, I didn't feel comfortable making that decision without talking with these 5 first. And so, again, I think that within our contract is a 90-day termination clause. So at any given, again, they'll be able to pick up some of their own if that's the desire of the board. We can go ahead and start having them work that process as of October 1. and kind of move that direction. But as far as actually terminating the contract and renegotiating a new contract, and that would be my proposal as well, is that, not only do they take over their own transfers for the non-emergent calls, but the ones that we do respond to is at a much higher rate than what it is right now.
And perhaps, Chiefs, when we have, is it the 10th, Rachel, when we have our workshop?
Yes.
We can continue the discussion, from you guys after you have the chance
You
to
need to know.
maybe digest
You need to know now, right? No.
Well,
the
and
information. I know.
I know you've done a lot of research on this, and I know
Yes, ma'am.
you've done a lot of work on it. And it is nervous letting that go, but at the
Sure.
same time, I think that we're going to be better off. I mean, I honestly do. More units here for our citizens. And now you said that, and what did you say we're doing now? The wall?
Yes, ma'am. About 6 or 7 weeks ago, the board authorized us to move forward with billing for wall time at the hospital.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't
That
know.
means if we get to the hospital and they don't have a room ready and we hold the patient on our stretcher, which happens often, we bill for that time now, whereas before we were just eating that cost. And so,
Well, I know I ended up in an emergency room,
Yeah.
I told you a couple of weeks ago, and it was at Shan's.
Mhm.
And those gentlemen stayed with me for an hour
Yes, ma'am.
because there was no beds. And so it was a long time
Yep.
that they were out of service just because of me. So,
Right. Well, again, I think it's going to be a benefit to the citizens. I know it's a blow financially for the county, but I do think it's going to be a benefit for the people who are utilizing our service, while still capturing the ones that we need to from that hospital that need to go, that are time sensitive. Still helping out in that regard, because those are our people down there at
Right.
that hospital.
right.
Thank you.
So I guess what I'm hearing is we want to wait until the 10th to the workshop to
To
have
discuss
more
it.
discussion.
Sure.
As far as the October 1st date, or
Just to have more conversation, and I know you're saying they're looking at spring time before the termination of that.
Well,
contract.
Actually, it's been October 1st.
right, they're ready to go October 1st.
Mhm.
Again, we've asked to hold that off, and again, with they have the right to move their own patients, so I don't know that we can say no to them,
Oh, sure.
but I think at some point that will come. That's why I don't think it's our decision to make as far as do we get rid of them or not. It's happening. It's just a matter of us.
Time.
This was more to be informative rather than
Yes, and
Okay.
for budget purposes for
Right.
us, as been mentioned, as Chief Carter mentioned, we're not going to decrease his revenue side of his budget because we're not sure yet. We have an idea, but we want to have a full year, fiscal year, to see what that's going to look like.
Right.
But what we're going to do on the internal side after he's made this presentation to you is we'll decrease the transfer budget line item, but we'll supplement it over here with the general fund revenue side. That's more internal on our side, just so we kind of have an idea of what we think that decrease is going to be. But we don't want to set him up for failure with his budget because we don't really quite know the financial impact. So, but he knows, and I'll state it for the record, not to spend that money.
Sure.
Because we do
Understood.
know we're going to lose some of that revenue. But the purpose for you tonight was more of the FYI, to be aware of it. There's no action item needed for us more than we just wanted y'all to know so we can do our internal adjustments.
Yes.
Well, and I think this is probably just one more example of why we need to look at diversifying our revenue for fire rescue, because right now our revenue is strictly off ad valorem and our fees for service. So, I'm not much of an investment guy, but I do know that a diversified portfolio looks much better than a non-diversified. So I think that, again, having those discussions and looking at those fire rescue workshops as far as revenue options for our department would be, I'm ready when you are. So,
Okay. Thank you for sharing with us, Chief, and we'll continue the discussion.
thank you.
That's all I have, Madam Chair, I
Okay.
promise.
Thank you. If nothing more for to go to the order, the hearing is now closed.